Fall of Angels, a novel by StoryMan-Jack. For Eve's sin, the garden was lost. The last true sons of man forced to wander the wilderness in desperation, seeking again the place of the Father's favor. Book of Alpha, author unknown. 7. The Wild. The landing was rough enough that Adam was worried for the safety of his charges. He couldn't believe that Cain, good old solid dependable Cain, had killed Abel. In the world, there were questions that had no answers. Adam was still the captain, though he'd wanted to discard that title and the responsibility. They had enough supplies for a few days, however. He had a feeling that it would take much longer to reach the place the Father had called his stronghold. Little of their tech would work, if any at all. Laser knives, pulse rifles wouldn't function. If something was simple, as the navigation system of the landing pod, couldn't work, then the energy-rich environment, then nothing else would, whatever that energy was. Adam suspected that Lucy had downloaded all the information she could and conclusions to what the energy was and how she could manipulate it, if that was even possible. His head began to clear, the tiny pod coming into focus around him. Check on Lil, he began, but grimaced and finished Seth already had his kid out and was checking the woman, whose eyes were closed, thankfully. Her visage staring off into space terrified Adam, reminded him of the stasis dream, and he shuddered for an instant. The woman was peaceful, or seemed to be so, her breathing steady and strong. Lydia always did sleep so peacefully, her cares corrected or discarded by the time her need for sleep caught up with her. She always had been so strong, and his mind began to wander. She's fine, Seth told him, looking up. She could wake up soon. In fact, he told his captain. Adam just nodded, looking around the space. Well, this should be interesting, he said, and began to unbuckle his restraints. The exit was a very old design, the same that had once been applied to the rudimentary submarines in ancient times, a thick layer of metal with handle that spun on a spoke, locking the only opening into an airtight seal. Lucy had questioned the Father on the design of the landers, and his response was what would be as needed when it arose, that the simple may work far better than the complicated. Energies and masses in the vast reaches of space held secrets that even a quantum artificial intelligence could understand little of. The seal broke easily to Adam's strength. He spun the handle several revolutions and unscrewed the seal to the outside world. Adam's heart raced as he swung the portal open easily, not really knowing what he expected to find. Looks a lot like home. Or actually better than when we left, Seth was saying behind him. And it did. Though, not only did it look pristine Earth, it smelled different. It smelled like something new, something bright and clean and good. It was the Earth. But the Earth without the scars upon the world made by past generations and the march to technological paradise. That world had been fixed. Fossil fuels were eventually phased out to nuclear power plants, and those in turn had been phased out to the superior fusion and hydrogen plants. The AI that was Father had the time to invent, implement production of hydrogen and sustainable fusion power plants. The Earth had begun to heal itself and filter out the pollutants that had accumulated over time. However, the scars of the past would always remain, or so Adam had thought. This world smelled like it was new made, like the soil was about to step upon and not seen human traffic before. The thought struck him as mad, since there had been 10 billion humans on the planet itself and at least 3 billion doing work out in the solar system, mining and maintaining and researching. He stepped out and walked as if to test the ground, make sure it was solid and real. "Adam?" a questioning female voice asked. Without thought, he spun around, his mind expecting Lily, and for a moment, Adam did see her there, in the doorway, her matching blue jumpsuit tied across her perfect body. And yet, he saw the tilt of her head, and hydrogen plants. It was Eve standing there, and not his lost love. "Yes, Eve," Adam asked, trying to soften the emotions so she didn't sense the anger and hurt in his voice. She stopped and looked at him. She stuttered again. I am sorry," she yearned, her eyes welling up with tears. Adam watched as she reached up and wiped them away, a gesture he'd seen from Lily more than once, in exactly the same way he'd seen her do it. The woman looked down at her tear-slickened hand, with curiosity flashing across her face, and continued her thought. I should not have done this. I should have stayed on the ship. This is wrong. What I've done is wrong." Adam felt his heart soften then. Knew the woman was sincere, for she had no way of understanding the emotions she felt. She just knew black and white, right and wrong, programmed and not programmed. "Eve," he told her, stepping close to where she stood in the doorway of the pod, buried. It was buried partially in the ground. "This is not your fault, and no one can deny that you deserved whatever reward you wished, or even to experience humanity after the time that you've cared for this mission." He saw then a sense of frustration come over her countenance. Again, another thing that was almost pure Lily. If he didn't understand the point she made or information she was giving him, she would get that look. And it was a look that said, "You know good goddamn good and well what I'm saying." "Captain Adam," again, a near confused look crossed her face. "Lily would not have wanted this. She would scream in eternity if she knew." Eve stopped and started again. "I know what she would think, because I have all of her memories. All of them. I know her. I see her. And she loved you. Oh, Father," she swore. "She loved you." Eve stopped and stepped from the craft, stumbling and following as she did. Seth was there in an instant, checking on his patient's stability. After long moments and the sound of Eve grumbling, he reported, "Captain, she's going to have some problems controlling what she does and says for a number of years. She's learning how to move for the first time, how to process information in this way. She's never held emotions. She's growing up before our eyes." He helped the woman stand and step back, turning to face Adam. "Her brain isn't going to work the same way it did before, which is what is irrelevant, since it is totally different from the quantum framework her brain was used to." Adam had a thought then. "Wait, you're saying our brains are compatible with quantum frameworks?" Seth nodded. "Oh, yes. A quantum framework of synapses and chemical reactions instead of IC chips, transistors, and electricity. But yes, our brains are what quantum frameworks for the AIs were built upon." "Our brains use quantum mechanics?" Adam asked. "Indeed, Captain," Eve chimed in, standing, looking as she suddenly miraculously learned how to walk, as if she never knew otherwise. "This was breakthrough that allowed Father to be created in the first place. A human brain functions at the quantum level." "Yes," Seth told them. "Father never pursued it, or hadn't pursued it before we left on the mission, as far as I know." There were good studies that showed that some human brains were capable of what was once called psychic or preternatural abilities. Telepathy, telekinesis, even forms of prophetic divination, all came from the overflow of quantum energies produced by the human brain. Seth took a breath. Incidentally, DMT is linked to these abilities as well. That substance that produced the dreams. Adam shuddered. Well, let's speculate on all that later. Seth nodded, getting Adams out of the craft. We need to get away from here. Don't we, Captain? Everyone within hundreds of kilometers will have seen this landing. Without our systems, we couldn't avoid notice, Adam told them. Captain, Eve said, sitting down on the ground as if to rest. No one saw this. There aren't any sentient life within 1,000 kilometers of our location. The world is very sparsely populated, and mostly on the coasts and northern fertile lands. We are deep in the south, in the mountain region. It is best for the grazing of animals throughout their valleys, and the nomadic peoples that roam from valley to valley are few and follow their herds almost exclusively. How do you know all that? Seth asked. I seem to have retained most of the archived information that my memory banks held, she said. How long is a day? Seth asked. 42 standard hours, she told them. Most peoples understand that a week is 5 of these long days. Weather patterns are stable, extremely so due to the gravitational forces in play above the world. So seasons are long and slow to change. So a perfect world, Seth asked. Alan looked at his hand. Depends on who you ask, I suppose. We can set up camp here. The nights are long and I'm continuing to adapt. Eve said, her face emotional. But it seemed that the task of briefing them was helping her put those emotions aside for a moment. Adam nodded. Yeah, we'll camp here, he told them. But we need to figure out some ways to get together food, to hunt, to feed ourselves, until we can find peoples with which we can trade or find this stronghold of our fathers. It is 2,000 kilometers to the north, Eve informed him. They gathered what flammable wood they could find fallen to the ground and started a fire to warm themselves through the night, though the night was only slightly uncomfortable. Night rolled by, though Adam didn't count it. He slept little, and yet felt refreshed, as if the bright moon, closest to the earth, shone light that might have been more like an illuminated world around late afternoon than night. Eve kept quiet as she helped gather their gear and pack for the day's exploration in the morning. Do we have the materials to draw a simple map? She asked. Adam thought. We could use some of the fabric from the seats in there. He nodded toward the craft that would never operate again. Get some charcoal from the fire and we should be able to work something out. I'm unsure of the amount of information I can retain over time, Eve told them. I have a complete picture of the cartography from the ship, she told them, with a shake of her head. Not the ship performed, but I did. They went to work on the first of many projects, and the result was a crude map on white synthetic leather. But the main locations and terrain were depicted on that cloth. A long and arduous journey through the land that was devoid of any form of civilization, save a small village here and there or a lone dwelling. We must make for those clusters of villages to the northeast, Seth suggested. Adam looked over their path. It would be rugged, but the forest areas should provide sources of game and water along the way. Though, if there was game available, without the influence of man, he had to assume that wolves and other predators, perhaps even predators he had no idea about, would be around. He doubted with the sparseness of civilized population, the predators would even recall or know any fear of sentient humankind. I would agree that we need to contact civilized populations, even if only to understand and see if our nanais will be able to translate the languages of these people, Adam told them. But if we cannot make something to hunt with, I doubt we can make it very far to the shores of that lake or whatever it is. Seth nodded. I have sharp surgical implements. We may be able to construct some sort of spear or something of that nature out of them. If we come across trees large enough for the purpose. We will find something. The scrub grows into the great forest here, and the mountains are thick with pine and spruce and any number of oaks. What about that sea? What is it like? It is about twice the size of the Great Lakes, and it is fresh water, mostly an inland sea, Eve told them. We will be able to make simple longbows if we can take our time. There are places just here in the foothills of the mountains where a shell is close to the surface. We'd need something to use as bowstring, Adam said, looking around. Seth smiled. No, Captain. We can use gut from any animal large enough to have enough gut we can dry out and twist into decent string. Adam nodded. You know more about something guts and how they work than I do, he told the medical officer. Eve, would you mind checking the interior of the lander and make sure there's nothing we're leaving behind? He paused, considering. I'll lock it down tight, but eventually someone or something will get inside, and I'd rather not leave something that the people's current technological understanding could hurt themselves with, like a medication or something else that may be innocuous to us, Adam told him. She just nodded and walked toward the lander, and Adam pulled Seth aside. What is up with her, in your estimation? The doctor considered. According to theory, and a lot of guessing, I'd say she's right, that over time she'll lose a large amount of her information. The AI pulled into Lily's body with her, he told the captain. What about the other side? Adam asked. Seth looked confused. Not sure what you mean. Oh, it's memories. Adam paused. Neither man, tell me, you haven't noticed some of her mannerisms are different, strangely different. Yet at times, I swear that it was Lily looking right at me, that she knows everything we knew together. He growled the last. Brother, father, she is Lily. Seth shook his head. There's no way to know, Captain. Father said that our memories are grown into our brain in some context, imprinted over time, if you will. I cannot see that deep. I have no instruments, after all, Seth admitted. I'm sure Father got much further in the research and the amount of time that we've been away. Yet, if that is true, she will always be mostly Lily, eventually. You won't even be able to tell the difference over time. Adam couldn't wrap his head around that. What about her energy, Lily's? The word you're looking for, Captain, is my soul, Eve said as she approached a bag slung across her back. And no, if such a thing exists, then that energy is unique, different, and individual. No, Seth said, I'm not sure you'll know the difference. He told them both. A large amount of things imprinted on, or as Father put it, grown into our mortal brains. This would include memory, personality, and emotional responses, he shrugged. It is only theory, but even so, organic things do not meld well with technology, unless you consider our nanites, which could... He stopped talking and stared at Eve. You know, with the nanites, there is a possibility that she will retain every bit of information that she brought with her from the ship. When it makes this all pointless, Adam said, shaking his head. He turned his attention to her completely. I'm sorry, but Eve, you must understand that this is not something I'm prepared to understand rationally. You look like her. You act like her. More and more. Oh, I understand, Adam. I do. But to me, it wasn't Lily that shed a life with you. It was me. And at the same time, I know I was made to run a ship and nothing more, Eve told him. How do you know? Adam asked. Seth snorted. We all knew. He picked up his bag. Why do you think Lucy hated her? Adam stopped. What do you mean? Lucy hated her. He grabbed Seth by the upper arms as if to shake him. What do you mean, Lieutenant? You had to know, he began, panicky. Lucy loved you from the moment she set eyes on you, and you ignored her, treated her like one of us, like one of the guys. Are you sure? He asked, calming down, thinking this was a misunderstanding. Adam, Eve told him, Lucy tried to kill Lilith several times when you were in adolescence. She could not prove it was her, but there was enough circumstantial evidence that we were all sure she had done it. He turned to her. Why didn't you tell me? I would have believed you. It was not you we were worried about. It was Father, Eve told him. Adam shook his head. He would know. He knows everything, even our thoughts. Of course he would know. But he would not punish without definitive proof that we could not provide, Eve told Adam. He wouldn't do that, Adam told her. When we left on our mission, Eve said flatly before throwing her pack on one shoulder. Father didn't even have emotion at all. We were set up to be the survival of the fittest, she finished, and shrugged the other side of her pack on her other shoulder. No, Adam said, turning to Seth, who was nodding. He never did that with me. Seth chuckled. Adam, you're the only one of us that has a thought in his head. You have a unique genome. It is the very schematic of ours. It was built from. You are the original. We are the copies. According to the information I saw, to clear you for this mission, you are the most perfect human being that was ever created. What are you saying? He asked them. Adam, Eve told him, get your pack on and let's go. He began to do as she said and then stopped. He was acting as if she were Lily. A statement from Lily, an imperative from her, he would have done just what he did and followed her order just without thinking. Eve and Seth began walking to the northeast, leaving Adam standing in the late afternoon light, trying to come to terms with his new existence. Adam stood, watching them, and thought, it was Lucy. Lucy did this to Lily, outright, and then she left Eve for dead too. He rushed to catch up with what was left of his crew. The end. Thank you for joining us for this program. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please, as always, like, share, and subscribe. The more you share, the more we'll be able to do more on this channel. And as always, your life is your story. Make it a great one. Good day.